First and foremost, thank you again for coming back on our platform. This conversation is really going to try to get into the story, your journey of kind of how you started and where you are currently today.
Got it.
Now, 2 to 3 years ago, we had our conversation at our studio in Atlanta, and I just wanted to first and foremost just thank you for showing that early support. And a lot has changed, and we've grown a lot since then. So just giving you that, like, we appreciate that very much.
Hey man, that's what it's all about. It's all about helping us. We don't do that enough as black people, and we should. But that's what we're put on this earth to do, is to serve, and how we serve is by helping others and paying it forward and not looking for anything in return.
Right. Did that mentality come at an early age?
My mentality of serving, of service, came young because we were rooted, you know. We grew up Catholic, you know. I was an altar boy for 10 years, untouched by a priest. My dad was Methodist, but we had a strong foundation in church. My dad was military, my mom was a teacher. Bam. So that discipline is going to be automatic.
Now, as far as you as a child, like, who was God Torry? Like, how was he? Was he someone that was mischievous? Was he cracking jokes? Like,
as a child, you know, I was silly. You know, I was kind of quiet, silly. Like, at home, I wasn't really, you know, Joe, my older brother Joe, who's a comedian. He was the one that was mischievous and, you know, a little Satan. But and he got in the most trouble. He got the most ass whooping. So I learned what not to do by his ass whoopings. And but I was always the little brother. 6 of us. I'm 5 of 6. So I have 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters, and I have a little sister. So a younger sister, should I say. And so I was just always crafty, always creating stuff, making my little robots, taking apart transistor radios and toys and making new stuff. So I was always creative and inquisitive, but I wasn't really a bad kid. You know, Joe was the one who was kind of like the bad one in the family as far as like getting into trouble. Yeah.
Did you ever like crave attention from your parents? Did you ever have to fight for like the attention because you guys had so many different siblings?
I never felt that I had to fight for attention. I was always inspired by what my older brothers and sisters did. Like whatever they did, I would mimic and do just as well, if not better. Like my older sister was a writer, a journalist. I wrote, you know, ended up writing scripts and things like that. My other sister ran track, you know. Now she's a head track coach, but I ran track. My 2 older brothers played football. I played football. Joe wrestled, I wrestled. My other brother did art, visual art, I did visual art. So everything they did, I mimicked. And you know, just when you're like that, you're trying to find your lane, trying to find what you do and what you do well. And I was dabbling in all of it.
Yeah. Ultimately, were they like your heroes, or did you look up to your parents more?
Oh, my older siblings were definitely my heroes, and my parents. I mean, we were raised to be independent. Right? I don't mind being a loner because all I need is God for anything, to be honest. But yeah, they were definitely my mentors and my heroes. I think that's why now the dynamic between my brother and I, Joe and I, are a little bit, you know, kind of friction because it was my hero, and then things shifted and changed, and that's, I think, the reason why our relationship is so rocky, or on and on again, off again now. But that's for a question later down the line.
I mean, yeah, we can, that still deals with childhood. Did you notice that kind of early on? Like that?
No, I didn't notice the tension between my brother and I until I moved out. When I first moved to LA, he was already here. I moved in with him. And then after a while, I started making a little money. And I was like, 2 grown-ass men don't need to live together. I wanted my own, because I lived with Joe in Joe's spot. I wasn't paying rent, because he said, you know, as long as you are working on your craft, you don't have to pay rent. So I was in the comic club working on my shit. And so I wanted my own place. I wanted to decorate it the way I wanted to decorate it. I wanted my own space. Joe always had a bunch of cats over there, a bunch of, you know, but it'd be fun sometimes. He would have Jada Pinkett to be over there, and AJ Johnson would be over there, or AJ Sanders, and DJ Quick, and they'd be smoking weed and playing dominoes. Regina King would be over there. And I was upstairs, like, in my room just studying, like writing jokes. So I used to study. I had a whole VHS collection of talk shows because I'm being on a talk show one day. I want to know how to act on a talk show, and I'd study, Will Smith on a talk show, or a bunch of Arsenio Hall shows, and Eddie Murphy on talk shows, and I learned how to do talk shows by watching and studying. I would study different comedians, the old school comedians. But they would be down there playing, dominoes and spades and drinking and smoking. And it was a fun time. It wasn't anything like crack houses and shit like that. But that was me. I was always like kind of the one who, I believe in prep. And show prep is everything.
Now, you would grow up in Missouri.
Yeah.
And make that transition to Los Angeles. And that was due to like seeing your brother go ahead and take off. Watching your brother's rise. In the 90s, I believe, he was really like becoming known. Like, how did you take that in?
Man, I was in college when he first was on TV. I think he was on Showtime at the Apollo, and I was trying to get some girls off of that. Yeah, my brother's on TV. Come to my dorm room. But I was trying to get some shine off of that, and then when he went on to do, it's funny because when he went on to do like television, I think my brother's first TV credit as an actor was on the sitcom Amen, And even when he did that, he was great, but I was sitting back like, I would have read the line this way. I wasn't even in the business yet, and I would have said it this way. So again, following into the footsteps of my older siblings and doing the same thing they did and the comparison. But I think that, like I said, the split happened, I think, when I moved out on my own and kind of got my own place, and it was like, and maybe in his mind, oh, he doesn't need me anymore, or I can't control him anymore.
Right.
Because when you're living under somebody's roof and you're not paying rent, you can shut the fuck up and you can't say nothing. You have no say so.
Right.
So it was like, I think it was a control thing.
Yeah. That's pretty deep because even I think about like, and this is kind of another subject, if you will, kind of like independent women having trouble in the dating experience because some dudes may not know how to approach them.
Right.
You become independent, it's less control. It's more of a fair exchange, if you will. So do you think that was kind of the dynamic there where you became this independent man and your brother he doesn't know how to really exist in your world?
I think it was confusion of being big bro and being a protector, because that was definitely prevalent and great. Definitely, But then at the same time, seeing me grow up, basically, and become my own person. And I think that's.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I think that was maybe confusing for him. He would never admit it, because narcissists don't. But that was. I think it was confusing for him. And he's used to, figuring it out, and I think that may have been tough for him. Because the protection and the love was definitely there, but at the same time, it's like, damn, he's, you gotta let go.
Here's just a straight, direct question. Do you think your success became a reason why he maybe could have been intimidated or felt some type of way about it?
I absolutely think my rise and me starting to work more towards success was an issue too, because he was big bro, he had started the game first, and then I started to work more, and I think that made it even tougher to see, like, being proud, but at the same time, like, oh snap, he looks like me, he sounds like me, maybe if he wasn't here, I would have had that role in his mind thinking. But, God didn't put him in that role. He has to realize that God put us where we are, wherever we are. Right. And I never looked at it as competition in terms of competition, but, I always rooted, for my brother. And it'd be weird. It was weird when I started working a little bit more. It was uncomfortable for me because I wanted to see him. I would almost be ashamed to say that I booked this role or booked that role, and or sometimes if I had an audition and I thought it was better for him, the role was suited, I'd call, hey man, tell your agent about this role, man. I think you should get in. And it's the same role, And there were times we go in on the same auditions, and I was hoping he booked it over me, just to keep the so it wouldn't be any animosity, any friction. And it happened recently. A couple of months ago, we was up for the same. Neither one of us got it. Actually, it happened a few times, and sometimes it's confusing because Joe has the arrogance or the cockiness or the confidence, whatever you want to call it, to do it, but my prep may be a little bit better because I have the insecurities. So I prep more, to be ready. And he preps, but it's more like I'm Joe Torry. Where I'm like, I got to be ready. So that's the difference in us. But I think with my career starting to ascend a little bit, made that friction even more.
I was even thinking about just like even that response in itself let me know that you love your brother.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think he knows?
I don't like him, but I love him.
Do you think your brother knows that you love him?
Of course he does. I keep fucking with him. If I didn't, I wouldn't keep, messing with him. But we're just, and it's also two alpha males. We're two alpha males, and he's big bruh, and usually big older siblings don't let you forget that they're the older siblings. I have 4 older siblings. Right? 2 will remind you that they are the older sibling. Right? The other 2 are just cool. We're just siblings. There's no thing. But being, Joe and I being 2 alpha males, and him being the older brother, I will play my position. Unless it gets to a point that's disrespectful, then it's like nah. But I will fall back, in those situations. But you ain't about to punk me. You ain't about to, taking something out of his mouth that he said. You ain't about to punk me. You ain't about to punk me either. So it's a weird dynamic, and I've prayed on it for years, and my mom has prayed on it for years too. So when God is ready for us to be not on again, off again, then he'll be ready, because I've done everything I can do. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah. And we'll kind of move forward to keep talking about your journey. You get to LA.
Yeah.
Did you notice homelessness right away in LA? Yes.
When I first got to LA, the first thing I noticed was the hood, South Central. The burned down buildings, because I got here in '92, which is late '92, which was months after the riots. The riots were like March of '92. I got here like late August '92. So I immediately saw Crenshaw Boulevard, and Leimert Park, some of the burned buildings and abandoned buildings and things like that. That was the first thing I noticed.
Yeah. So as you got to LA, you noticed maybe Hollywood wasn't what it seemed. How did you prepare for like this new identity that you were creating?
When I got to LA, it was tough at first. I didn't like LA the first 2 years I was here, because I was broke. There's no place for somebody if you ain't got no money, right? And I would hang out with Joe. I would go to these parties that, he was invited to and hang out. And I didn't really like it. I didn't like the people. I didn't like I'd see somebody that I admired either as a singer or an actor or whatever, and I'd see him at this party apart from Joe, and like, hey, love your work, and they give me the, and then I see him later at the same party, and me and Joe together, like, oh, you didn't tell me you was Joe's brother. And I was like, I was just saying I love your work. I didn't think I needed to tell you I was Joe's brother. So I saw very early how people were in this town.
Got you.
And that turned me off. And I had nothing to sell. I hadn't done anything. No credits under my belt. I wasn't working on anything but stand up and being a PA on the Martin Lawrence show. That was it. I mean, hey, I can deliver the script.
Right.
What the hell?
Right.
And I wasn't the person that Joe's my brother. I was never that dude, because I wanted to create my own identity. And I did that very early. Like, I think it started when in grade school, Joe was so, I don't want to say bad, but he was so mischievous in even grade school. When I had the teachers that he had previous to me, Joe left such an impact, they would call me Joe. And it was always a mistake. Then I went to high school. I went to the same high school that he had graduated, so I went to the high school when he graduated, and I was Lil Joe. So I said, nope, going to another high school. Got to create my own identity. And then I'd go to his college and visit, Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, and I was Lil Joe. I said, oh, when I go to college, I'm not going to Lincoln. I'm going to Southeast Missouri State in Cape Girardeau, hours away, because so I've always been that person that wanted to have my own identity, but that's how we were raised. We were raised independent to have your own, Yeah, so I think that's where it started anyway for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned being a PA on Martin.
Yeah.
Was that your first official credit when it comes to the industry?
My first job in Los Angeles actually was I was doing extra work, of course. You get out here, you do extra work. For those who don't know, it's background artists. Your props that eat, some people call them. But also I was a marketing assistant for a movie called Zebrahead. Joe, of course, had done Poetic Justice, so he knew John Singleton. John Singleton's publicist was Cassandra Butcher. Cassandra Butcher was working on a project that Michael Rappaport had starred in called Zebrahead and The Bush Ain't Right. And so I was marketing was my major in college before I got kicked out. And so I basically was setting up test screenings to screen the movie for, go to campuses at USC and UCLA and Cal State, whatever. And that was kind of my first job. And then Joe talked to Martin and was like, Martin Lawrence, and was like, hey, my little brother's out here, do you have anything on the show he can do? And Martin set up an interview with the production coordinator, and I went in and met with the production coordinator and gave me a job. And I knew that I'm always gonna work my ass off. That's just the way we were raised. And I was going above and beyond with that position. They never saw me sitting down. They never saw me resting. My dad always taught us that if you see something need to be done, go ahead. Don't wait to be asked. Go ahead and do it. And the copy room would be all flustered, where we run the scripts off. And I go straighten it up. And I find that we had all this cardstock we was buying for the covers of the script. We're buying it, and we had 3 and 4 boxes of it. If somebody would just cleaned up the copy room, we wouldn't have spent that money. So, it would be 3 or 4 boxes of 3/4-inch tape that we've been buying, and it was just in the room. Somebody took time to clean it up. So I always found stuff to do, clean up the writer's room with the snacks, go and clean the refrigerator with all the spoiled food. No one had to tell me to do it. I just did it. And I guess now thinking about that brings me to Phat Tuesdays and why I created it, because there was a void. No one said go create this room. It was like, oh shit, they're not coming to see us. I need to change that. So I guess the mentality now, looking back, this epiphany, a light bulb moment, but that's in my DNA. But that's from my dad, who always said, if you see something need done, don't wait to be asked, go ahead and do it. If you see a hanger on the floor, it's not supposed to be there, even though you didn't put it there, pick it up and put it where it's supposed to belong. So that's dad. That's
beautiful. As far as Martin, you seeing the show take off in front of your eyes, and how did you take that in? And how many seasons were you with that show?
I was a PA on the Martin show, production assistant. For those who don't know, it's like you're like a gopher, you're like an intern, a paid intern. You do everything nobody else wants to do. You're not even at the bottom of the totem pole. You are the cement holding that motherfucker up. But I did all these odd jobs. If a writer needed something from the cleaners, we had to go pick that up. If someone left a pot of greens on the stove, we had to go turn it off. We did all of that. And I did all of that. And my coworkers too. We dropped off scripts to, HBO and Fox, so they were the production companies for it. We took scripts to actors and actresses or directors all times of day or night. So we did everything, and I did it one season. And I was like, okay, which is, I still say, the greatest job I ever had, because I learned the business that way. You know, I learned LA that way because I was new to LA and driving around with a Thomas guy pre Google Maps and pre Waze and all that shit. You got a big binder and you got to find the street and highlight it. And so I learned how to navigate my way through LA with that job. I learned how to navigate my way through Hollywood with that job. Everything happens for a reason. And I was proud to be a PA. But I was like, I'm doing this shit one season and that's it. And the next season, when I was there as a production assistant, is when I used to crack on everybody. It's just natural. We played the dozens, we do mama jokes, and I was cracking on everybody. So that's when the writers started coming out of the room, getting jokes from me to put in the script. And, you know, that's how the writing part kind of came into play. And I ended up doing Def Comedy Jam toward the end of that season. And I remember doing Def Comedy Jam in New York. And I remember calling back to the set after my set that I did on Def Jam and having a really good set. I remember going to a bar next door, it was an Irish bar too, a pub. And I picked up the payphone and called back to the Martin set. And was like, man, I just did Def Jam. I killed it. And that was a good moment.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a good moment. It was like, wow, I went back, finished the season as a PA because it hadn't aired yet. I had a decision to make. Should I go back to the full-time PA job and get that $400, $500 a week, or take a leap of faith and pursue stand-up, full-time?
Yeah.
And it was like, thank God, Bob Sumner, and I'm sure with the help of Joe, put me on the Def Comedy Jam tour.
Got you.
And that was God saying, yeah, leave.
Right.
I got you.
Right. Now, as far as, so you would go from PA to writer on Martin, and that was all in one season?
No, the writing, I was a PA second season. Third season is when I co-wrote an episode for Martin. There was a writer's assistant on the show named Matt Diamond, and he was writing a spec script for the show. And he was trying to, guys, is this funny? He's like, man, I'm like, man, that's corny, man, say this. And he'd say, God, what about this one? I said, man, that's good, boom. And I said, man, if you sell it, I was joking. Say, if you sell this, I want some money, just jokingly. He said, well, let's write one together then. It's like, cool, because he knew structure and story. He had been a writer's assistant on the show for 2 years. And I knew jokes and culture. So it was like, yeah, let's do it. So Martin was always good about checking on me, and he always said, guys, sit in the writer's room when you have time and learn the writing process, So he was always good at that. And, I had wrote that episode of Martin, Romantic Weekend, when they got attacked by this rat. And then I had another decision to make, because they actually wanted me to come back as a PA, when I was, assigned that script. And I was like, I'm not about to write and deliver my own damn script.
Right.
And that was kind of the decision to part ways. And but they called me back. They would call me back because I wasn't bitter and mad and stuff. I was, Martin was a mentor. So they would call me back for certain stuff. And if they needed a body double for Martin, when he played one of the characters and somebody had to dress, we were kind of the same size, and same ears in a way. So I would be his body double. When they needed somebody to warm up the audience warm up. When the regular person, J. Anthony Brown or Myra J. couldn't do it, I'd come in and do all this warm up. So it was like I was so involved in that show and still cool with the family, the Lawrence family who, embraced me. And so I always kept, an eye on, what was going on over there.
How did you view Martin, seeing him at that time in his, as we say, bag, in his element? Like, how did you take that in, seeing that firsthand? Well,
like Joe and the whole season of Def Comedy Jam, Martin, Lawrence inspired me, to do stand-up. So watching the whole season of Def Comedy Jam, I mean, all those comedians on there, from Adele Givens and to Yvette Wilson and, Ricky Harris and Eddie Griffin and all those comedians, Cedric and Steve Harvey and Bernie. I mean, they inspired me to do stand-up. And then working on the Martin show and watching him now as an actor, influenced me as well because you know, what Martin would take what was written on the page and what he brought to it was completely different and, you know, just crazy bananas. So I learned that too from Martin and his work ethic. His work ethic was always, even to this day, he kind of works like he's broke. And we all know he ain't. Right. But I made him, I said that to him one time when we used to go play pickup basketball at his mom's house.
Okay.
And he always grinds like he's broke. And he's not.
Martin, the show, I think, do you consider that, just straight up, do you consider that the greatest sitcom of all time, black or white?
Was Martin the greatest sitcom of all time, black or white? It was definitely its own. It definitely influenced, you know, a lot of the sitcoms that came afterwards. Okay. That style of comedy, that style of funny, you know, it's in a class by itself. You know, it was a little before its time, but I don't know if you can do that exact same sitcom right now with that energy. But it had a talented enough crew where they can adapt and make it more current. I would want to see that show come back, but you know, the more mature version of it that they are as actors and actresses and writers. Right. Because a lot of times, I mean, you know, they had a great writing staff. Okay. And Martin was very talented. And when you have someone like Martin like that, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to find that joke and you sleep and you're tired, you just want to be like, you know what, just put this down, Martin will make it funny. Which he will, but you want it on the page. And sometimes it's tough because it's like, you know, Martin would make it funny, but you also want it on the page as well. And I think it was a perfect balance of, you know, talented writers and Martin being talented, which made that show great.
Yeah, definitely. Like, in my opinion, it's a flawless show because it just felt really authentic.
It was really authentic.
I think that's what we appreciated about it.
The Martin Show was really authentic. I don't think there was another sitcom that authentic. I can say maybe Jamie Foxx Show, because Jamie is another one who was good at improv, and you can tell that the stuff that he said wasn't scripted, you know, and that's how Martin was. If Eddie Murphy would have done a sitcom, it would have been just like that as well, watching him and Martin work on the set of Life and what was on the page and what came out of their mouths and the color that they put to, you know, those words. It's crazy.
So Martin, we love the show, but there were some behind the scenes stories, some things that we weren't clear on. Stan Winters, played by Garrett Morris, would exit. Now, he had spoken out against this. He said that he got shot. Were you around that time when he got?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was around when he got injured, shot, whatever, yeah.
Injured?
Injured, shot. Something happened. I think he was at a place he wasn't supposed to be, and he got shot.
And so he was in the hospital and found out, I guess looking at scripts, this is allegedly, through his accounts, he saw that Stan would move to China. That means that his role was no more. Do you know, and so his gripe is that he was upset that he found out that he was in the hospital. He found out while in the hospital, and he said that no one really explained to him why he was removed from the show. Does Mr. Guy Torry have any insight about that?
I have no insight on why certain characters were maybe written out or was going to be written out. You kind of notice that you don't see him around. You kind of notice you're not delivering scripts to the house anymore. And that could be a lot of things. I don't know. Sometimes it's contracts. You know, if you want to demand a little bit more money than what you're getting paid, and that's agent and production company stuff. And I mean, I've been in those situations where they're asking you to take less money, and you're like, no. And when they see that, and sometimes you don't even know what's going on. Sometimes your agent and them fighting, and you don't know. And next thing you know, your part is dwindling. So I know I missed him when he left. I mean, I was only at PA one season, but I would still go and visit the set, you know. And it was always fun when he was around, you know, on the set, because he's just a cool, down-to-earth cat, and his comedy, you know, his receipts are solid, you know, from SNL to everything he's done. And he's a solid guy. Jonathan Grise, who played the janitor, the white kid on the show. I used to love delivering scripts to his house because he'd invite me in for a beer. It'd be, you know, midnight and we're out delivering scripts. Man, come on in and drink a beer with me, man. Sit down. And, you know, I used to like that. I used to love sometimes Tashina Arnold. She lived up in the hills, windy, dark, and she had a dog that wouldn't like quit like when you approach. So sometimes she would just be like, if it's too late, guys, just put it in my dressing room. Don't even have to wear. And I loved working for them because they treated me like family. Tisha Campbell would do the same thing.
Right.
And it was just like, I mean, they would really, really treat me as if I wasn't a production assistant, that I was a, you know, a producer or something. And I, you know, but it was dope working on. But I don't know of any friction going on behind the scenes with them. I know the last season got a little tricky.
Yeah. You had already exited then?
Huh?
Have you already exited?
I was gone by then. I did one season as a PA and I was out. I was like, one season, that's it. And I wrote an episode. So I was gone by fifth season.
Right.
And it was sad because, man, that cast, the chemistry was so dope. And like you said, as a legendary show, it was legendary because everybody brought something to the table. You know, everybody held their weight. Even when you're in a scene with Martin, as great as he is, you know, they could keep up. You know, and that's what you want in an ensemble is people who can keep up. And a lot of improv. You go here, I'm gonna match you. You go here, I'm gonna match you. And it was like a great tennis match between Venus and Serena. You know, two greats and like boom, boom, I'll match you shot for shot.
Right. And I think with you saying that it was a family, you know, we would hear about the fallout between Martin and Tisha, and we also would find out via Carl Payne that him and Martin had friction too. Well,
you gotta it's a family. And families after a while fall out. I can tell you that firsthand. And when you're around each other for that amount of time, that long, and then we're artists, we're weird any fucking way. And we have egos. And so, you know, you have people in your ear telling you this, you should be getting paid more, you should be getting more lines, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And you listen to all that noise, and your agents, you know, they're gassing you up. Oh my God, you're great, you should be doing this, and they just want, you know, more money. And or your managers and your team, they're all in your ear. So everybody got noise in their ears. How come you? It takes a strong person to really shout that noise out and say, look, y'all work for me. I know you're trying to solidify your position on this team, but my team is the cast.
Yeah.
And it's easy to listen to the noise and get sidetracked, and that causes friction in the family.
Yeah.
You know? I'm sure with my brother and I'm sure people probably say the same thing to me as say to him, oh, you're funnier than your brother, you're funnier than your brother, you're funnier than your brother, or your brother's funnier than you. If Big Brother hears enough time from other people that I'm funnier, that's gonna cause animosity toward me. If someone says Joe's funnier to me, I'm like, you know, back then I was like, yeah, you're right, that's my mentor, of course. He's funnier, I'm sillier. Now if you ask me that today, definitely funny. But I'm comfortable saying that. I wasn't always comfortable saying that. And comedy is subjective. There's people who don't think I'm funny and think Joe's funnier. And that's fine with them. They're not a hater. It's just that's their brand of comedy. There's people who think vice versa. So it's like, you know, it is what it is. But when you come to a family like the show, like Martin, and you're together all those years, and you start to rise, and people are in your ear talking, sometimes it's hard to drown out that noise, but you have to.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you started out probably without those people on the outside, and the cast was your family. And in any family, if there's animosity, if there's jealousies, then it's going to be friction, and that messes up the chemistry. And you mess up the chemistry, it fucks up the show.
Yeah. In present day, they're supposed to be doing a reunion now.
Yeah.
And we've seen them over the last few years together. What was your reaction to see Martin and Tisha kind of like squash whatever was going on behind the scenes when you saw them together?
I'm not sure when this is going to air. I haven't seen it yet. But when I heard that they were doing a reunion, I thought, great, because everybody's adults now. You know, years have passed. Everybody know that show is iconic. You know, it was great seeing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion and stuff being squashed there, stuff that we didn't know was going on behind the scenes and stuff like that. I would love to see more sitcoms or dramas, the cast get back together and talk about, you know, how was it working together and things like that. But to have that reunion come, and my only regret that I'm not gonna be able to see is Tommy Ford, who, you know, and just like with the Fresh Prince, not seeing James Avery, you know, those were two of the centerpieces of those shows, because James Avery was this trained actor who grounded the show, you know, and so Will can be wild and Alfonso Ribeiro can be wild, and you know, everybody else can be their crazy characters because he grounded the show. And then with Martin, Tommy grounded the show. He was the trained, and also, I mean, Tisha and Tashina, trained actresses as well. But, you know, Tommy was that one that and not see those two central figures, and I mean central as in the ground, not there. It's like, man, I would have loved to have seen them part of those both reunions.
Probably get their perspective too, because they both did seem to kind of be that ground, but not as vocal in terms of personality. And
James Avery on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Tommy Ford on the Martin Show was the Derek Fisher, what he was to the Lakers. You know, Derek Fisher kept Shaq and Kobe from really, and he was the quiet glue that really held those teams together. And I think James Avery on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Tommy Ford on that show were the glue that quietly held those casts together.
Mm-hmm. Now we would transition out of Martin, and some time will go by, and Phat Tuesdays would start rolling. How did that even start?
Phat Tuesdays started, you know, in 1995, and you know, it was just, I wanted a place to showcase other comedians, but I wanted a place to call home too, like, you know, a place to get my reps in. As a comedian, you gotta get that stage time. It's the stage time is king, and when you're hosting, it's even better because you're on stage a lot, and you want to be comfortable on that stage, like it's your living room. Mm-hmm. And you know, I also hated how white people made you feel as a black comedian in Los Angeles, and you weren't a regular at the comedy clubs on Sunset. Mm-hmm. And they made you feel like, oh, well, you know, until you get here, you're not really a comedian. I hated how they felt. I hated the black comedians who were regulars in those clubs on Sunset and come down to the hood and peacock, you know, when we'd ask them, hey, you going on stage tonight at, you know, Gino's Pizza or the Comedy Act Theater or the Fun House at Maverick's Flat? And they were like, no, or the Townhouse in Ladera. Oh no, I'm going on at the store. I have a spot at the Improv tonight. And they would peacock and kind of rub it in our faces like, yeah, I'm in and you're not. And I hated that feeling. And I wanted to change that. And there was a lot of black comedians who were upset when I brought the hood to Hollywood. I thought they would embrace it and be like, yeah, we all here, but they was like, nah, you niggas need to stay down there. And these are black comedians who said that. And some popular names that I won't say, but it wasn't the welcome wagon from the black comedians that were regulars in those clubs on Sunset. And it was very few of them because, you know, they didn't let a lot of us in at that time. It was the time that we were living in at that time.
Was it tied to just this one black comedian theory that floats around, like one black comedian at a time?
I believe it was part of the crab in a barrel syndrome. I mean, usually when black people get into some white shit, we want to be the only one. Mm-hmm. And you know, walk around with an S on the chest. And I'm sure that's how it was with slaves. I'm sure there were some niggas, You know, the house niggas was walking around the field niggas like, yeah, motherfucker, we eating bacon. We got leftover steak. You know, they didn't finish it off the bone, but we ate the rest of the master's meat on that bone. It was red, it was bleeding, but I don't give a fuck. And that's why we had to eat chitlins. That's why we came up with all that slave food, you know, chitlins and tripe, you know, which I think is cow pussy. But we had to eat. We had to make do with what we could. Mm-hmm. That's why we're greater inventors and things like that when it comes to a lot of the things we created, because we had to create something out of nothing. So that still went on in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 70s with stand-up. I mean, slaves was telling jokes. People don't realize, when I studied this for this documentary, I had to go back and study black comedy and black history. And slaves used to tell jokes to keep them getting their ass whooped. And if they were funny enough, their master would take them to another plantation to perform for another slave master. Mm. So niggas been on tour a long time. You know? So I do the study, I do the history. So Fat Tuesdays was necessary because we needed that spot. We needed that showcase at a respectable club, and why not the world famous Comedy Store?
Yeah. Was it a hard conversation to convince them to make that happen, or did they kind of see what you saw?
I'm not sure if the conversation was hard or not. It was I had a manager at the time who was friends with the guy who was the booker, and he had the conversation about me having a night there. And you know, to be on record, Eddie Griffin had done an urban night there for a little while. Okay. And it wasn't as successful in its run. Mm-hmm. At the night it was crazy. It's Eddie Griffin. I mean, come on, he's a legend. But it didn't last as long, and probably because he, you know, was on tour and was gone. But I think that really kind of greased the wheels for the Comedy Store to say, you know what, let's try this again. You know, there's a famous story about his night. Tupac and Tretch from Naughty by Nature was there, and a fight broke out, and they had teamed up and was, you know, beating somebody's ass. Tretch had that big chain around he used to wear his neck, that big real gate chain. I heard he was beating somebody with that. Urban legend has it. I'm not sure, but I think that was kind of like, oh, whoa. So it made it easier for me to come after that and do my night.
Yeah. Speaking of Pac, he came to your night, Fat Tuesdays. Do you remember that first time he came, and then when was the last time you saw him?
First time I met Pac was the day I also met Janet Jackson. They were doing some pickup shots of Poetic Justice, the movie my brother was in. They'd been done shooting, but they went back and shot some shots of Janet. And and my brother was like, hey, let's go visit the set. As we were coming on to the lot, it was the Columbia Pictures lot back then. It's Sony lot now. Tupac was exiting. He was leaving, and he was hot. He was somebody. He was about to go ride on some niggas. He was about to go, you know, shoot some cats up or get back, revenge. And my brother was like, man, yo, you're a celebrity now. You're a star now. You got to get other people to do that for you. You can't do it. But he was like, man, fuck that, Joe. I was like, and it's funny because I remember seeing the movie Juice, and I was like, man, that dude's a great actor. Pac is a great actor. Then I saw him do it, and I was like, oh, that nigga wasn't acting. That's Pac. And then, but he was like, oh, what's up, man, little man, welcome to LA, you know, whoop the woo woo. And then I would see him before Fat Tuesdays. I used to host this open mic hip hop show at a place called Carlos and Charlie's on Sunset Boulevard across from Roxbury. And they had an open mic hip hop night. And I would host it, and Tupac would come and look at artists. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember one time, it was, I won't tell the whole story. Okay, yeah.
Okay, I won't tell the whole story.
All right. I remember one time Pac came, and it was a week before Poetic Justice came out. And he went in. I don't know why he went in on the whole Jackson family. But it was an uncomfortable situation. And he just asked him one question about, hey, your movie coming out next week, Poetic Justice, got some words. And he was just like, and I was like, I'm new to LA, I'm green. And now I know how Mike Myers felt when Kanye West said President Bush don't like black people. Because that's how I was standing like, thank you, Mr. Pac. I don't know why I said Mr. Pac, but at that point, it was woo woo woo. But when I saw him, you know, I was like, thank you, Mr. Pac. Because there was a camera crew there.
Right.
And if I can find that footage, man.
Was this in response to Janet?
Yes.
Janet thing?
It was in response to Janet wanting him to take an AIDS test because they had kissing scenes. And I get it. I mean, back then we were totally uneducated on HIV, on the HIV virus. And so, we thought if you sat on a toilet, you can get it. No one knew. So I understood her side and I understood his side, but he was, you know, he was Mr. I get around, you know? And she was like, I'm a Jackson, I'm royalty. I'm trying to be one of your get arounds. So I get it, but Pac was always encouraging, man. He'd come to Fat Tuesdays and just be like, man, you create your own lane, you know? Get out your brother's shadow, whoop the whoop, 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 whoop. I remember one night he came, and because he came a lot, but one night he come and Joe was there. My brother Joe was there, and Joe was gonna get on stage. And Tupac was like, no, nigga, you got yours, man. Let your little brother get his, man. Sit down and have a drink with a nigga. So, I mean, maybe it was Joe seeing me on stage, you know, rocking and wanted to get a piece of that. Like, hey, well, I'm big bro. You know, and Pac recognized that and was like, man, sit down. Let your brother have his shine. Mm-hmm. You know? Chill. Have a drink with me. Yeah. And that was Pac. You know? That was Pac, man.
Yeah. What was the last time you saw him alive?
The last time I saw Tupac alive, I believe, may have been at a concert, and after the concert. No, it wasn't that. Last time I saw Pac alive was at Fat Tuesdays. He was at Fat Tuesdays. I moved down to the main room now. So this was 96. And he was gang related. The movie Gang Related, I think, was coming out, and I was pubbing it up, you know. Go see Tupac and Gang Related, da-da-da-da-da. And it was 2 weeks later when he got shot in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because I had a hard decision to make because he had gotten shot and because he was such a fan of Fat Tuesdays. You know, it happened that Saturday. Fat Tuesdays was that Tuesday. And it's like as a comedian, you want to address it, but you don't want to bring the mood down to the room. Mm-hmm. So I had a decision to make. Do I address the Tupac shooting, because he was family, you know, Fat Tuesday family? Do I risk bringing the room down, because it's still comedy? And one of those things that you got to think on your feet. And I remember that Mike Tyson fight, there was a dude who sang the national anthem who was fucking horrible. He was horrible. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what, you know, Pac got shot, you know, I hope he's well, I hope he's, you know, pulls through. I think it was a case of mistaken identity, you know. They wasn't trying to shoot Pac, they was trying to shoot that nigga who sang the national anthem. You know, all niggas look alike. And I started doing it, so I addressed it and made him laugh and then moved on. Yeah. So you gotta address the elephant in the room, not bring the audience down, and bring it back to comedy.
Right.
Then the next week he died. I said, well, damn, I don't know if I wanna, you know, if I could do this again. You know, I survived last week. So I remember I had this joke. I used to do a joke about black funerals in LA. And I said, you know, y'all heard the news, man, we lost Tupac. It was actually 2 weeks later because I didn't, I'm trying to think if I even did a Tuesday. Because I remember where I was when I heard the news. I was on the corner of, I was in West LA, I was on the corner of Pico and Sepulveda at a hardware store. And I sat in the car when I heard it on the radio and was just like, man, I started crying. And so then Fat Tuesdays happened, and I had to find another way to address the elephant in the room, but not bring the crowd down. And I had an old joke about black funerals in LA and how it's like a club. And I just said, hey, Tupac passed away, man. If they have a service in LA, you know, don't be ghetto. And I start going into, you know, the black community, the old joke I used to do, and it made him laugh. So I addressed it and I moved on, you know, and those were growing moments for me because, you know, as a comedian and as the host of that room, you have to keep the mood light and fun, but as comedians, we have the responsibility of reporting the news our way, in our sick, fucked up, twisted way.
Yeah. When I think about Phat Tuesdays, it feels like it was part of the forefront when it came to Def Comedy Jam, like black comedy and hip hop infusing as one.
Def Comedy Jam influenced, you know, Phat Tuesdays. You know, I modeled Phat Tuesdays off of Def Comedy Jam, and kind of off of Comic View. Comic View was, you know, Def Jam, but your family can watch. You know what I mean? Your kids can watch. Def Jam was just raw, gutter in your face, straight, no chaser. This is how we do it, son. And that was how I modeled Phat Tuesdays. The name Phat Tuesdays alone came from I wanted to be, you know, sponsored by Phat Farm clothing line. I was managed by Russell and Stan Lathan, and I wanted free gear. So the fact that it was called Phat Tuesdays, the fat came from Phat Farm, and that was Nicole Roberts, who was Stan Lathan's assistant at the time, who, you know, helped me come up with the name. Very,
very interesting, because one, you got Russell, who became a pioneer in the comedy space with Def Comedy Jam, and then you also have Bill Cosby, who was his own titan, and those two energies clash. Did you feel? Did you take any of the criticism personal that Bill Cosby was having when it came to this newfound hip hop and comedy?
Bill Cosby hated Def Comedy Jam. Bill Cosby hated any type of comedy that was vulgar. I remember talking to Eddie Murphy on the set of Life, and we were talking about his concert film Raw, and he was saying how more raw it was than what we saw. And he had some stuff in there about Bill that was funny as hell. I was like, man, you should re-release it and do the deleted scenes. And Eddie was just respectful and like, nah, you know, I got kids now. No one needs to see that footage. Like, that, man. But, you know, prior, I had a conversation with Eddie Murphy about Bill. Man, fuck Bill. It's just crazy to see how Bill was going in on black comedians, but what he was doing when the mic was off and the spotlight wasn't on, and it was such a contradiction. However you want to color it, and I'm probably gonna lose a few people on this. I give two shits, but I didn't like how Bill Cosby approached it. I didn't like how he was on a talk show talking about Def Jam and how they're filthy and all this, but when the camera's not on, your mouth is just as foul as Def Jam. Now, I will say Bill Cosby is on my comedy Mount Rushmore. He is still one of the greatest comedians to ever grace the stage. But that's where it ends for me right there, is you can't take away what he meant to the black community in stand-up and in TV and film. I've had to learn to separate the two, because I am where I am because of some of the strides that Bill Cosby made and some of the sacrifices that he made for us in that realm. And what somebody do behind closed doors, I can't respect what he's been accused of.
Right.
You know, I just can't. And when he had the town hall meetings, you know, and it's just like, okay, come on. You know, even in the Bible, it says, you know, don't talk about, you know, the splinter in my eye when you have a big tree trunk hanging out of yours. You know, I'm talking about my backyard, and you got some old refrigerators and shit and old cars rusted out in your backyard. So I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm flawed. And I'm not going to speak on someone else's style of comedy. It's subjective. And for him to do that, you know, just to dog us like that, I put a bad taste in my mouth with him as a person, but I still respect him as a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. So, in response,
now me and Joe and I have different sides to
You guys
that.
argued over that before?
We argued over it, yeah. Yeah, Joe, they're frat brothers, and you know.
You think that was part of the fallout too? Was you
No,
guys
we fall out way below that. Me and Joe don't agree on a lot of stuff.
Okay.
You know, we back in the day when I'm a Laker fan, Joe's a Sixer fan. When they swept us in the finals, that image of Joe's laugh is still in my head, and this is way back when. I hold grudges sometimes. But Joe's a bandwagon guy too. I mean, now he's a Laker fan because they were winning, and a Clipper fan when they were winning. But he's really and a Ram fan because they were winning. But he's really a Raider fan and a Sixer fan. But when those teams ain't hot, then Joe finds the next train to jump on, the next bus. But I'm through and through a fan of my teams. Period.
I want to kind of touch on something. Russell Simmons. Now he would respond to Cosby and wrote an open letter some years ago, pretty much like defending Def Comedy Jam, Def Jam, what he was doing. Now Cosby would end up running into Russell Simmons. Have you heard of this story?
Mm-mm. I want to know. I like to see that meeting.
So this is what happens according to this story. There was some type of benefit, and Russell knew that he wanted to apologize to Cosby for the stuff that he was saying that was out there. And this is what he said in an open letter or in an open statement. I wanted to find him. This is Russell. I wanted to find him to apologize, to tell him I was sorry about my statements, to tell him that I loved him, Simmons explained. Suddenly, I turned and he was behind the curtain, and I said, I love you. And Cosby responded on some real hip hop shit. Get the fuck out my face.
I believe it.
Any surprise to that?
I'm not surprised at all. That was people who have met Bill Cosby. Even when you watch Jerry Seinfeld's Comedian, stand-up documentary, and he goes to see Cosby, and you know Cosby is using language that he, faulted us for using on Def Comedy Jam. It's like at least, we're honest about it. We're not. I love all forms of comedy. I'm not going to knock someone else's creativity either. If you want to use language in your stand-up, then use language in your stand-up. I'm not going to knock you for that. My only rule in stand-up is I had at Fat Tuesdays was no rape jokes.
Why?
I don't think any guy should get on stage and be joking about rape.
And this is interesting, the reason why, because I have conversations back in our studio about what can we cover and whatnot. But do you feel like men can be joked about getting raped? Is that a different thing?
I'm sure a lot of men are raped, especially in prison or as children, But if a woman, if he talks about it in that way, then you have to me. Who am I? I'm not no comedy czar or whatever. But I'm saying if you talk about your experience of being raped, that's different because you're telling your story. But I don't think any man should get on stage and joke about another man or even a woman getting raped. I just think it's low hanging fruit, and it's nothing. People come to comedy shows to laugh or to take their mind off of the problems of the world, and a lot of women have been sexually assaulted out there, and they're coming to this place to get away from that, and here's some guy joking about it. There's tons of punchlines that I could have used with using that reference that was funny, but I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that, because I have to be conscious of who's in the audience, and most of those comedy shows there are women in the audience, and so many women are sexually assaulted and bury it so deep. I don't want to be the one to tear that Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone on the show that I'm hosting or the show that I'm headlining on talking about it, because now I have to go out and undo all that negative energy. It's not just because I just think it's insensitive, but at the same time, you just change the mood of the room.
Yeah. I think even hearing that, it shows that there's a level of forced empathy, because some people don't care that. Some comedians don't care. It's just like...
And that's their right.
Did you have something personally that happened in your life to make you care about it more?
I have sisters and I have a mom, and I have, most of my crew are women, You know, my writer, my writing partner, my friends who are like my homies, but they're women. And, you know, my staff was predominantly women. My agents are women. So most of them are women. So it's just, it's not something I think about. It's just something that just exists. It's not like, well, I'm going to, it just is.
Yeah. Now, were you shocked with the success of Phat Tuesdays?
I'm still shocked at the success of Phat Tuesdays. Like, I'm really like, wow. It wasn't until Michael Blackson planted the seed years ago on a plane when he said, man, I miss Phat Tuesdays. Man, these young comics need to know about it. And it was that made the light bulb go off, like, really? People miss Phat Tuesdays? And I started looking at, you know, old footage that I had. I started asking, you know, comedians what Phat Tuesdays meant to them. There's a guy I knew who's an up-and-coming director, Bishop Moore, who, you know, I grabbed him and said, hey, man, let's start doing these interviews. I want to do a sizzle for Phat Tuesdays and sell it as a documentary. And we started doing interviews, and I started hearing these stories of what Phat Tuesdays meant to these comedians, and I had no idea. I know Nick Cannon used to always come up to me and say, hey, man, I owe you. I was like, well, man, I got discovered at Phat Tuesdays. And I was like, you don't owe me shit. I didn't write none of your jokes. I didn't make one phone call on your behalf. I didn't set one meeting up. I gave you a platform like hundreds of other comedians, and you make it did what it did. So you owe me nothing. I can't take credit for that. It's just as much I can't take credit for someone who may have bombed and went home and slit their wrists. I'm not taking credit for that either. So it was these stories that came from my staff, that came from people who used to come and tell me how much Phat Tuesdays meant to them. Like, wow, okay, let's see. And is it just an LA thing? You know, do people in Topeka, Kansas give a fuck about Phat Tuesdays? But when you look at Phat Tuesdays on a broader level and the comedians that came through there, then it does make it more global, because these comedians that came through there are some of their favorite comedians. And why not learn their origin story or how they get to where they are on the way? I mean, Phat Tuesdays didn't. I say this about Phat Tuesdays. We're all on the freeway and we're all going to a destination. You're going to get there eventually. No matter what speed you're going, we're all going to get to, you know, the Laker game. But there's a carpool lane. I think Phat Tuesdays was a carpool lane for black comedians in that time. They're going to get to their destination anyway, because they're a talented bunch of men and women. But Phat Tuesdays, I think, allowed it to hop in the carpool lane and get there a little bit sooner. And if there's anything I can take from Phat Tuesdays, it's I was glad I was used as a vessel to create that carpool lane.
Yeah. Kind of transitioning out of Phat Tuesdays, you would also have a big milestone in your life when you were selected to host the Kings of Comedy tour. Now, did that happen before or after Phat Tuesdays?
Hosting the Kings of Comedy tour happened, I will believe, because of Phat Tuesdays. Like many other things in my career, I had a good rapport with comedians. Walter Latham, you know, was looking for a host. He consulted Steve Harvey and Cedric and Bernie Mac. And at the time, I was with Bernie Mac a lot because we were shooting the movie Life at the same time. Where that Kings of Comedy tour went on. And, you know, they thought I was the right person. You know, I had been young, because I was considered myself one of the princes, not a king, because I was only in comedy 5 years. You know, so it really takes 10 years for you to even really say, like, you know, I can do this full time for the rest of my life. So to get that blessing from above and get that blessing from those three giants was great. And that was an assignment too, because it made me, and I say this all the time, it made me a comedian. I was a comic when I started. By the time I finished, I was a comedian.
How did you...
Two different things.
How did you not have imposter syndrome? Seeing DL, Cedric, Bernie performed, how did you still keep in your own lane?
I learned a lot on the Kings of Comedy tour. I learned what a comic was, what a comedian was, but also seeing Bernie Mac, you know, Steve Harvey, and Cedric go up every night and kill it. I've heard these jokes over and over again, and I laughed just as hard every time. I knew what punchline was coming, but I laughed every time because those were the giants that they are. Mm-hmm. And DL hadn't joined the tour until after I left. DL did do one date with us because I think in New Orleans, Bernie Mac couldn't do it, and DL filled in. Mm-hmm. And when I left the tour voluntarily, mm-hmm. they added DL, which was smart because he was one of the other comedians who was selling out 5,000 seaters by himself. And plus he was on a hot show on ABC, The Hughleys. I mean, why not? It's smart for them to add him, who had paid the same dudes that, you know, Steve and Bernie had paid, mm-hmm. you know, and Cedric. I hadn't paid those dudes, you know, and I voluntarily left for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to build my act. I had jokes, but I didn't have an act.
Right. And
then I ended up booking a TV show that was paying me 10 times as much than what they were paying me on that tour. But the experience I got on that tour was priceless. And Steve, Bernie, and Cedric, too, treated me like family. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that was because of Joe and their relationship with Joe. But also, I was respectful. I wasn't a hothead. I was, you know, camaraderie. Me and Cedric had a similar joke, right? I went in the first show. I did my joke. I don't think Ced seen my set. He came out and did a joke that was similar. Wasn't the same joke. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to take mine out. I had enough material to still do an effective hosting job without stepping on Cedric's joke. Now, his jokes would have been funnier, but still, it's just respect for him to take that joke out of my set and let it be fresh for the audience.
You being a selfless person, because that's a selfless act, right? You think that has hindered your career opportunities because you kind of let others go first, or you don't want to step on anyone's toes? Because I do feel like in this game to advance, you kind of have to be aggressive. And
you know, where I am in my career is exactly where I am supposed to be in my career. Mm-hmm. And where I'm not, I'm not. Is there some things I could have done differently? Yeah, but would that put me in a different place? We won't know. And I think I got into a lot of fights and a lot of arguments with agents and managers because I was so focused on Fat Tuesdays and so focused on putting other people on that they were afraid that I was stunning my own growth as an actor. You know, having an audition in the morning, but running Fat Tuesdays to, you know, getting in at 1 o'clock, you know, in the morning, tired, probably tipsy, and probably not being as ready for those auditions that I should have been. Mm-hmm. But to me, Fat Tuesdays was more important. Yeah. If I sacrificed some twinkle from my own star to create multiple stars or help multiple potential stars, then I ain't mad at that. Yeah. It was definitely worth the sacrifice.
Couple more questions. You guys good on time, everybody?
I'm good, yeah.
Cool. Couple more questions. As far as there was a conversation that Chappelle was considered or was asked to join the Kings of Comedy. Have you ever heard that story?
From what I understand, I think when the Kings of Comedy was being put together, I believe Walter Latham was going after comedians who could sell out 5,000 seaters by themselves, right? And at that time, it was people like Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, Cedric, Bernie Mac, Chris Tucker. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I think Joe may have been, you know, one of those comedians as well. But there's a bunch of them who can sell out. Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock. And maybe some comedians feel like I don't want to be a part of an ensemble. I don't want to be part of that group. And Dave Chappelle has always been his own guy. He's always has integrity. He's always had, like, you know, that confidence. And he believed in himself and betted on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave had a different audience back then too. You know, Dave audiences were well segregated and diverse. I mean, I'm sorry. Dave Chappelle audience was very diverse, whereas Cedric, Bernie, and Steve audiences were predominantly black.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's two different audiences. Dave Chappelle was a king, you know, but he didn't need to be with the other kings. And they didn't need each other either, but it was smart. If you look at, you're a headliner, and you're doing 5,000 seaters,
mm-hmm.
and you're doing an hour set,
mm-hmm.
and you make X amount of dollars, it's the stress and pressure to sell those tickets, do everything, the weight is on your shoulders,
mm-hmm.
right? If I can make triple the money and do half the time, only 30 minutes,
mm-hmm.
and have other people help me sell these tickets, that's smart. If I can go out and do half the work and make 3 times the money, what? And play to a bigger audience and expand my brand? Because some fans of Steve Harvey may not have been fans of Steve or fans of Bernie. Some fans of Bernie may not have been. So now I can show my brand to people who wouldn't normally come see me. And me hosting was like, I'm getting all their fans. And I'm getting the experience because they were mentors. So it made sense to work smarter, not harder. That's an easy situation.
Right. So my question is that why do you think Chappelle turned it down? Just because he just is his own person?
Chappelle's always been his own person, and you know, if that offer did come to Chappelle, you know, Chappelle, it's just like I don't need that. I'm doing me, and Chappelle gets along with just about everybody, but it's also chemistry, you know.
That would have been weird. Who do you think would have went first?
I think with that lineup, it depends on who would have been on that show, who would have gone up first, second, or third. Bernie was gonna always go second.
Okay.
Bernie, from what I understand from my brother Joe Torry, who toured with Def Comedy Jam before I did, and toured with Bernie Mac, that was Bernie Mac's spot, the third spot. The host, the opener, Bernie. He loved that spot because that's a sweet spot. That's when she's moist and she's wet, and all you gotta do is slide in. That's that spot. You ain't gotta kiss her. You ain't gotta play with her nipples. She ready. You ain't even gotta go down on her. You should, but it's easy. It's like that's that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, nothing wrong with foreplay, but you know, I'm the host. I'm the foreplay.
Right.
I'm gonna get a phone number. Said was coming on after me when I was hosting. Said got her clothes off and got her nice and moist, and then Bernie came in and slid in, did what he did, slid out. And then Steve came right behind and cuddled her and said, "Hey, I'm gonna put you to sleep now. The show's over. I'm gonna put you to bed."
Where does Dave fall in that position?
Dave's style of stand-up, Dave Chappelle's style of stand-up is different than all of us. Dave Chappelle's stand-up is, you have to see it in more than just 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to. Dave is all of that. Dave is the foreplay. Dave he's gonna get you her moist and whatever, and then he's gonna put you to bed too. Now all those guys can do that, but on this particular tour, Dave's style, I think, wouldn't have fit. He's a king on his own, and those three are kings on their own, but also the styles fit, because styles make, like in boxing, style makes fights.
Right.
And when I did Fat Tuesdays, and I taught someone how to book the room, my boy Terrence Reynolds from St. Louis, I had to teach him how to book a lineup. There's a certain chemistry that goes in booking a lineup. You can't put the same style comedians on the same show. At least I don't think so. You don't want 2 people or 3 people doing impersonations. You know, let one do impersonations, have another one if he's dirty, dirty. If one clean, do clean. If you have a female perspective, that female perspective. Have different perspectives, point of views on a show, so everybody gets something in the audience. We put numbers together, and I put a number by people's name in terms of style, energy, and where they can fit in a lineup. And then I put these combinations together. You know, who's a one? You can't have 3 ones on a show. You can have a 1, a 2, a 4, and a 5. But you know, you can have a 2 even starting off, and a 3, a 4, and a 5. So I put these combinations together so Terrence, who I taught how to book it, would have a foolproof, you know, kind of combination. Now, people gonna bomb every once in a while. This just happens. It's the nature of the business. But you had a lineup that was consistent. You had a lineup that was made up of different styles of stand-up and energies.
In the Phat Tuesday documentary, you did highlight the rivalry between your brother and yourself. Kind of wanted to just, you said currently you guys aren't seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, I mean, my brothers and I relationship is up and down. It's depends on the day, depends on the week, depends on the month, depends on the event. And at any given day, we can fall out. And because I'm a person that have an issue with holding grudges, I'm a little bit more stubborn on coming back around. But I think that's being stubborn is my wall on not allowing it to happen a 900th time. So my wall is, you know, hold this grudge so I can keep the distance.
Are you in a fight for respect when it comes to your brother? You don't think he respects you?
I'm never in a fight for respect. I'm not worried about respect. You know, in terms of the business, I'm not worried about that.
Right.
In terms of as a man, and you're gonna respect me as a man.
Is
period.
that where the tension is?
You know, the issue between Joe and I is really just to want Joe to stop being a dick.
How old is your brother?
Joe is 15 going on, no. Joe's a very wise.
He's in his 50s, right?
Joe's a very wise guy. Joe is 4 years older than myself, and he's very smart. There's just some insecurities there that he just needs to face and quit and be honest about it. And like, no, none of us are perfect. We're trying to be perfect.
Is the tension, is it like y'all just don't talk to each other, or is it like when I see you, it might be some hands?
No, it's never to the point where if I see you, it's gonna be some hands. You know, it's never to that point. I'm just not going. You know, it's uncomfortable on my part. You know, and because it's like I don't know. It's not even. It's uncontrollable. It's just like an energy that happens. You know, and I'm cordial because you know I'll be the you know the peacemaker because I'm just tired. So it's just okay, you know.
You ever went to counseling for it?
I know I need some professional counseling for several things that I deal with personally, and you know that's one of them, of course, the relationship between my brother and I, and just I have an issue with people who I feel like stab me in the back, or people who I feel like for lack of respect, to be honest. I don't think I'm fighting for respect, but as I think about it, and it boils down to everything, it's not respect in terms of you're gonna respect me. Respect me as a man. Respect me as an individual. I don't care if you know, not respect me about my credits as far as like in Joe, you know, in regard to Joe. But just respect me as an artist and my own person, and quit the big brother, little brother bullshit.
Is that what you would tell him if he was watching this right now? What would you tell him?
Quit being a dick. That's what I would tell Joe. Just quit being a dick. Put the dick away, nigga.
Okay. Couple more, and then like I got 3 more. I got 3 more.
I can't put it any more simple than that.
Yeah.
You know, I remember years ago, I gave Joe a weight, you know, paperweight for a desk saying Heart of Platinum, you know, because he has a big heart. And you know, when he did his charity foundation in St. Louis and just things how he would look out for people, you know, inspired me. I looked up to that. And I don't know where that Joe is these days. I just don't. That's not the same. I think that's why, you know, it's disappointing that the friction, because, you know, rooting for me, but are you really?
Yeah.
You know, I hear it, but action speaks louder than words.
Yeah. You guys could have been like the Wayans bros. I'm sure.
I don't know if we would have been like the Wayans. They have a huge family, and everyone is 1,000% talented. We have a huge family. Only 3 of us are really talented in the entertainment field, that entered the entertainment field. Myself, Joe, my little sister Malaka. My older sister is talented in sports. She's amazing, you know, educator. My other sister was an amazing journalist. And my other brother, he's an amazing writer, you know, in that regard. But as far as performers, it was definitely my brother Joe and my little sister Malaka and myself who were crazy enough to try and do this side of the camera.
Where does doing drama fall for you? You know, you did American History X. Like, where does that, is that a passion of yours?
I love doing dramas more than I love doing comedies. First of all, you gotta realize comedians are dark people. We're dark, twisted, fucked up individuals on the inside. We do comedy, bring light to our dark spaces. A lot of this is sometimes just a veil, just a shield, tears of a clown. Smokey Robinson sang it best. We're control freaks. I heard a great quote saying, we do stand-up because we're so afraid of getting laughed at. We do comedy to control the laughter. And that's true. With drama, comedians will make great dramatic actors. If we take our comedy ego and throw it away and commit to that role, that dramatic role, and go to those dark places that are already there that we're covering up. And when I do dramas, I don't, you know, comedians are naturally want to find the joke. You know, that's just how we're trained, how we're wired. Find the punchline, find the punchline. Get the truth, find the punchline. Find the comedy in the truth, find the comedy in the pain. But drama, just play the pain. You have to take that muscle, that comedy muscle, and dial it back so it won't be ready to find, so you can, you know, play that pain truthfully and honestly and transparently. And a lot of comics just can't do that. But if they do that, you know, then you'll see more comedians in dramatic, you know, roles.
Yeah. You would get American History X, and do you kind of remember that moment in your life when you got that role? So
American History X was, you know, a role that they came to Phat Tuesdays to see someone else, and they ended up giving me the role, or offering me the role. I had no idea they was even in there. And when I went up, I think my subject matter and my honesty is what piqued them to say, you know, we want that guy. Of course, it was an assignment from God because he put all that together. And the rest was history.
Yeah. In that movie, it would spotlight, you know, racism. And that's something that, of course, we've experienced over the years and current day. Just a question, you know, because it did highlight, I think, more so like white people being racist and showing that type of hate. Do you think black people can be racist?
Black people can never be racist because we don't have the power to hold a whole race down. And that's, in my definition, racism. We don't have the power to hold a whole race back. And we can be bigots, we can be prejudiced, we can't be racist. If we had the power to, we probably would, but there are not enough black people in position of power to be racist.
So you think, So you said if black folks was in power, we would be racist in terms of you think we would behave the way that our counterparts has behaved against us?
I think if black people
Because I feel
had
like
the
they
power,
fear that. I feel that they fear that.
I feel that black people, if you flipped it, I'm not sure if we would be racist toward white people if we had the power, because that's the only way we can be racist, or not, because we have a lot of empathy and we're very forgiving people. But I think we're very forgiving people because we've been oppressed and we know how it feels to be oppressed. But if we have never gone through that, would we be forgiving? Would we have that empathy? Because that's something that, we wouldn't have gone through, so we wouldn't have experienced being treated less than human. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough one. This country is more sexist than racist. If you look at the history of this country, black men had the right to vote before white women. So we came from being slaves and having tails and considered animals and property, and we could vote, and white women still couldn't vote.
Okay, fast forward to today, you have the Karens emerging that still flex that racism that exists. So how true is that, what you stated, when you kind of look at what's going on today?
What, with the Karens?
Yeah.
The Karens, I think, some of them, are like Stepford wife-ish, Mm-hmm. A lot of them don't want to see a woman president, which I don't understand. Most countries that are ran by women are ran well. The Karens may be doing it out of, having a husband or someone in their family, a father that raised them, Stepford wife-ish. Mm-hmm. So the Karens, I think it's racist. Racism is just ignorance. It's lack of knowledge, Bigotry is the same way, prejudice the same way, prejudging someone without knowing them first. Judging someone on account of their gender, their race, their religion, their style, whatever. It's all ignorance. When it comes down to it, it's all ignorance. And and thank God every white person, a white woman is not a Karen. And thank God every white person isn't a racist. Mm-hmm. But in terms of today, I just think it's funny how, I don't use words like minority. I keep that out of my vocabulary because I feel it's a word that was created to make anybody other than a white male feel minor. Minority, minor, you're less than. And the only person who's not considered a minority is a white male.
Already put himself in position that I'm superior.
To feel superior, even to women, to blacks, to Asians, to Latinos, to the Jewish community, to whoever. Africans, it's that almost like that big brother, big sister syndrome.
Because from a global standpoint, white people don't have a bigger population in terms of globally, right? Aren't they kind of the minority?
That's exactly my point. They're the minority, actually, because the only person who's not considered a minority are white males. And if you add everybody else up, even in just this country, we're the majority. It's those seeds that are planted to that they did a very great job at, making us feel inferior. Mm-hmm. That's why we get a Bentley and put rims on it. You don't need to. White man got one, I got one, but I'm gonna do one better. I'm gonna put rims on mine. But it's a mentality that we need to get out of.
Yeah. In my exchanges with you, I've always just felt like you do great interviews. In learning your story, like there's a business acumen that's there to run Phat Tuesdays. You are talented when it comes on camera. You were able to hold your weight with the legends, Martin, Eddie Murphy. Guy Torry, on paper, has everything that I think people would want to be or want to see more of. Why do you think your career hasn't catapulted to the tip top of this industry?
I think my career isn't where other people think it should be or where I think it should be. Of course, I'm a type of guy that I cut off fingers and put up mirrors. Mm-hmm. And I say that because I blame no one for anything. I give all credit to God, and whatever my failures are, I know it's me, personally. Mm-hmm. And I think my rise was pretty quicker than most, mm-hmm. and there's a lot of work that went into that, mm-hmm. from, touring, mm-hmm. at the same time running Phat Tuesdays, at the same time acting, at the same time doing a radio show in St. Louis from LA, a morning show, to a new marriage. And that's me saying yes to all those things, not blaming any of those things for just draining all of my energy. The mind is like a computer. When you have so many files open, your computer's gonna run slower. It's gonna use more energy, more power. And I'm a product of my mom and pop who never sat their ass down. Even when they retired, they never sat their ass down. And I'm doing all these things. I'm sure that had to take away from, my creativity, my energy. And I really just kind of like burned out a little bit on myself, just burned out trying to do so much. And, I just believe there's times I know I could have worked harder. I could have, as if I wasn't working hard already, but I'm always feeling like I haven't worked enough or hard enough. And I'm happy with where I am. And I really believe that God has me here for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. Doing this documentary 13 years ago would have not had the same impact of doing it right now. Everything had to work together, It happened during the pandemic, where we had access to the talent that we did, because normally they would be on a movie set or touring. The Comedy Store would have been open if it had not been a pandemic. It would have been hard for us to shoot at the Comedy Store if it was normal business hours. But because they were shut down, we were able to get the people that we wanted, and some we couldn't get, but we also get the space. So saying all that to say everything happens in time. And I sometimes think about, well, maybe God knew I wasn't ready for a certain level of success of where I was in my life, And of course, when you're in your field, you want to be at the top. Mm-hmm. But is that top for you? Is that position for you? Can you handle that?
What does the top look like in your definition for what you would want to do?
The top for me is being able to have a top-notch production company and giving opportunities to young black, female, and male comedians, mm-hmm. who want to tell their story, who have their project. And our stories as black comedians aren't told enough, our origin stories. And if you listen to a lot of our origin stories, there's some great stories. We had a bunch of them in the documentary we had to cut out because it was just too long and it was getting off message. But we're like, man, we got to find a way, we got to find a way to get them off the cutting room floor.
Behind the Phat Tuesday series.
Yeah. So that was pitched as well. When I pitched, I came in with 5 projects. I didn't come in with just a documentary. I came in with, I had 9 years of underground doing it to develop those other stories, those other projects. So yeah.
Yeah. So the energy of this, the theme of this is just being unforgotten. And so I hope that you see yourself as someone that is unforgotten, despite if people felt that you should be bigger than where you are. Do you kind of feel that? Like, are you content?
Oh yeah, I think definitely people were expecting me to be at a certain place in my career. I mean, some of the people who befriended me, I think were friends because of maybe they thought that and it didn't happen quick enough for them. And you can tell when they start acting different. Like, I thought you was gonna pop in about 2 or 3 years. Nigga, you ain't doing nothing. And you can tell how they speak to you different. They respond to you different. Their energy's different. And I just smile, and it's funny because I feel like it's God keeping me in my place sometimes when you see these articles on comedy and comedy awards and what so-and-so meant to comedy and they're marking comedy, and Phat Tuesdays was never mentioned at all. And the flesh in me is like, ain't this a bitch? But the God in me is like, smile, chill. Let all that be done, let all that be said, and your story be told.
Yeah.
And it's that like, my mom said something years ago when my dad passed away. I told her she was arrogant. I said, I know where Joe gets his arrogance from. And my mom said, I'm not arrogant, I'm spiritually bold. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. Like, what the hell? What the hell? That's an arrogant, that's a narcissist saying that. But then as the years went by, that stuck with me. We had our 80th birthday party and we called it Spiritually Bold. But it's having so much faith in God that you're bold with what you do because you know he got your back. Entertainers can feel safe sometimes when they go into a spot because they got security behind them. They know they got my back. At Phat Tuesdays, I had a great security team. And I knew I could probably say some bullshit on stage and get away with it because my security had my back. When you're spiritually bold, God got you.
Right.
I mean, don't go off and do no crazy, stupid shit. But if you disciplined and obedient and you do the work and you see the finish line long before it's there, you can be spiritually bold. And we forget that God has brought us through so much other stuff. I look at my career. I didn't study acting like great actors. He put me in open doors that I wouldn't have been able to open, especially with Phat Tuesdays and this and that, whatever. And sometimes we forget that. We treat God like he ain't got receipts. And he got receipts. He got receipts for all of us. So you look back at your life and things he brought you through or things he blessed you with and you don't know how it happened. We treat God like a black man on rodeo with shopping bags. I want to see your receipt. And he like, really? You sat in that chair and knew it was going to hold you up. You didn't ask that chair for a receipt. So where I am is where I am. And where I am, I'm supposed to be. And where I'm going to be, I'm going to be. Not where I want to be, where I'm going to be. Words have power. Change your language, you change your life, change your words, you change your world. And you will be there. End of story.